Bulletin live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. Tonight, presented by Abdullah bin Ahmed al-Rubi'i. The headlines. His Highness, the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs, visit the cyclone-hit areas in the governorates of North and South Al-Batina. The Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology continues to work for repairing the damages to Al-Batina main road. State sectors exerts continuous efforts to bring back services and to repair damages caused by Cyclone Shaheen. And the Sultanate celebrates the 50th anniversary of its joining the United Nations, and the Foreign Minister stresses that the Sultanate is an example of diplomacy, international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Thank you for joining us. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. His Highness Sayyid Shihab bin Tariq bin Taimur Al Saeed, Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs, paid a field visit today to affected areas in the Governorate of North and South Al-Batina and a number of field deployment sites of Sultan's Armed Forces and other units at the Ministry of Defense in the two governorates as part of the national tireless efforts to contain the impacts of the tropical condition Shaheen. His Highness, the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs, was accompanied during the visit by His Excellency Dr. Mohammed bin Nasser al-Zaabi, Secretary General of the Ministry of Defense, and Brigadier Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah al-Mandari, Assistant Chief of Staff for Operations and Planning and Chairman of the Main Military Committee for Emergency Management at the Sultan's Armed Forces. With the framework of duties being undertaken by the Main Committee for Emergency Management, His Highness the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs, with the presence of Rear Admiral Saif bin Nasser al-Rahbi, Commander of the Royal Navy of Oman, listened to a briefing at Saeed bin Sultan Naval Base about the Royal Navy of Oman and its roles and missions in the securing the coastal areas affected by the tropical condition and support it provides for all sectors concerned with research and rescue and medical transport. At the Advanced Command Headquarters of the National Center for Emergency Management in the Wilaya of Suwaiq, His Highness was briefed by Major General Abdullah bin Ali al-Harthi, Assistant Inspector General of Police and Customs for Operations and Deputy Chairman of the National Committee for Emergency Management, in which he highlighted the national efforts exerted by the committee in coordination and joint cooperation with the bodies concerned as part of the national plans, pointing out to the volume of impacts on affected areas and integrated roles to deal with them in a way that contribute to bringing the situation back to normal. After that, His Highness the Deputy Prime Minister for the Defense Affairs visited the headquarters of the Military Subcommittee for Emergency Management in the Governorate of South Al-Batina and listened to a briefing on latest developments about the effects of the tropical condition and efforts exerted to serve citizens and residents through support operations being carried out by Sultan Armed Forces as part of the plans of the Main Military Committee for Emergency Management in a way that enhanced the integrated national work in dealing with the impacts of the tropical condition. Then His Highness headed to the headquarters of the Military Subcommittee in the Governorate of North Al-Batina and was briefed by its chairman on efforts of Sultan Armed Forces. His Highness got acquainted with the national duties being carried out by Sultan's Armed Forces in serving citizens and residents through providing and transporting foodstuff and carrying out transport operations for citizens, medical evacuation and rescue operations, and supporting various government bodies to undertake their duties. At the end of the visit, His Highness the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs went in an air tour to observe the damages in the wilayas of Suwaiq and Al-Khabura. His Highness, the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs, praised during the visit the efforts being exerted by all military bodies and other government establishments in dealing with the impacts caused by Shaheen cyclone, especially in some wilayas of the governorate of South and North Al-Batina, pointing out to the level of national integration in restoring back the situation to normal and in utilizing national capabilities to serve citizens and residents affected in the two governorates. His Highness also valued the noble national roles being undertaken by the National Committee for Emergency Management, the main Military Committee for Emergency Management, and related subcommittees and Sultan's Armed Forces and their sacrifices to serve citizens and residents in the dear country, urging all to double efforts in bringing life back to normalcy and safeguard the national achievements under the wise leadership of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, the Supreme Commander. Various military installations, including Sultan's Armed Forces, Royal Guard of Oman, Sultan Special Force, and other departments in Ministry of Defense, continue their efforts to deal with the damages caused by the adverse weather condition that hit wilayas of North Al-Batina. The military forces coordinated their efforts through the Military Main Committee for Emergency Management that joined hands with the National Committee for Emergency Management. The military forces deployed their resources to reverse the impacts of Shaheen tropical cyclone and minimize the burden on citizens and residents in the affected areas. The efforts extended include the provision of food and water to people in the affected areas and towing and clearing vehicles from wadis and ponds. Royal Air Force of Oman continued to conduct flights in affected areas for medical evacuation and search and rescue. The Air Force also transported goods and necessities to people in coordinations with Royal Army of Oman and Oman Charitable Organization. The Royal Navy of Oman conducted search and rescue missions in the coastal areas of the affected areas. Meanwhile, the engineering services of the Ministry of Defense has been working over the past days to make the roads accessible and reconnect the affected area to the power grid. Royal Guard of Oman continues its efforts towards reducing the impact of Cyclone Shaheen in the affected areas. In this regard, the Royal Guard of Oman has distributed water tankers and food to affected citizens and used towing equipment to move stuck vehicles from the streets, wadis and ponds. It also helped in clearing the roads from debris and mud in coordination with other military installations and private and government institutions. In implementation of the royal directives of His Majesty the Sultan to facilitate the fixing procedures of the infrastructure that was damaged due to the tropical condition Shaheen, the Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology awarded the Gulfar Engineering and Contracting Company the works of repairing the damages to Al-Batina Main Road starting from the Wilaya of Al-Musuna until the Wilaya of Saham. In the governorate of Al-Zahira, the tropical cyclone Shaheen affected the main roads connecting the governorate to other major areas and other internal roads between the wilayats, making the roads partially inaccessible. The tropical cyclone also caused power outage as the power grid in the governorate was affected. Efforts made by military forces contributed in making the roads accessible and restoring power to most wilayats in the governorate. His Excellency General Sultan bin Mohammed Al Nu'mani, Minister of the Royal Office, received in his office today His Excellency Bill Murray, the UK Ambassador to the Sultanate of Oman. At the beginning, His Excellency the Minister of the Royal Office welcomed the guest and wished him success in his assignment. On his turn, His Excellency Bill Murray expressed her appreciation to the Sultanate in enhancing means of joint cooperation to realize the joint interest of both countries. Both parties exchanged cordial talks and discussed matters of mutual interest. His Excellency General Sultan bin Mohammed Al Nu'mani, Minister of the Royal Office, also received His Excellency Ali Najafi Khurshudi, the Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran, accredited to the Sultanate. Both parties exchanged cordial talks and discussed matters of mutual interest and manner to develop cooperation between the two friendly countries. Now, the Sultanate marks today the 50th anniversary of its accession to the United Nations. 50 years have passed since the Sultanate of Oman has become a member of the global organization. Since then, Oman has been active in the international arena in building peace around the world, contributing to the stability in the Middle East and other areas around the world. The United Nations is the parliament of the global congregations of states parties in addressing regional and international affairs of the world in various fields, including initiating peacemaking process and improving commerce and health between states countries. The Sultanate contributed in bringing warring parties to the table of negotiation and brokering peace deals, like facilitating the Iran nuclear deal and supporting peace efforts in the Palestine-Israel issue. The Sultanate has adopted and still adopts a no-intervention policy while observing international laws and traditions and maintaining peace and stability in the region. This policy is stressing firmly during His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq's first speech. The Sultanate stands with the United Nations in supporting human rights and contributing to send relief to affected countries as part of its international commitments towards the international community. In a speech on this occasion, His Excellency Sayyid Badr bin Hamad bin Hamoud Al Busaidi, Foreign Minister, during his speech stressed that the Sultanate during the past 50 years has set a civilized model for diplomacy, international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. He added that he would like to recall the principle established by the architect of modern Oman's Renaissance, late His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, may God rest his soul, which His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, may God protect him, continues to uphold in the relations with the world. On this day, 50 years ago, the Sultanate of Oman began its modern political and diplomatic journey to join other nations in building a new world that is linked by bridges of friendship, mutual respect and positive cooperation, as well as adhere to the principles of respect for the sovereignty of states, good neighborliness and non-interference in the internal affairs of others. Throughout history, the Sultanate has continued its cultural and humanitarian initiatives through its cultural identity as embodied in its noble people, their tolerant values and ethics, which they practice as an approach and a way of life and in their dealings everywhere. Accordingly, we move ahead and advance together towards the future with its all challenges and opportunities, and Oman remains in its esteemed position across ages and generations. His Excellency Sheikh Khalifa bin Ali Al Harthi, Undersecretary of Foreign Ministry for Diplomatic Affairs, in a statement to Oman Radio and Television, stressed that the Sultanate continues its cooperation with the United Nations to reach to a solution for the Yemeni crisis, as well as to deliver humanitarian aids to Yemen. The Minister of Labour signed a cooperation program with the Petroleum Development Oman PDO to provide about 150 job opportunities in private sector facilities in the energy and mineral sectors. More details coming up in this report.
As part of its endeavors to implement the vision and objectives of training and employing the national job seekers, the Ministry of Labour signed a Memorandum of Collaboration MOC with Petroleum Development Oman PDO to prepare highly trained national cadres of job seekers to fill job vacancies in the energy and mineral sector.
To deliver the ministry's targets for this year, through a strategy of collaborating with several and different sectors to secure jobs for the job seekers. through training them and closing the gaps of their skills and competences. The ministry signed several MOCs with different sectors, and this is the second MOC that is signed for the sector of energy and minerals.
The MOC will support a number of programs, 4 of which have already been approved to start before the end of 2021.
This MOC comes as a continuation of good collaboration between Ministry of Labor and PDO. It focuses on different elements of training for employment, upskilling, reskilling, redeployment, training on job or on job training as well. So we have got approval for 5 programs initially by the ministry, which hopefully will provide around 150 jobs, for job seekers. And hopefully this number will increase in the coming future, because all depends on really security of good employment opportunities. We cannot start any training for employment unless we have job guaranteed by the job employers. So we are looking forward for this collaboration or continuation of that collaboration with the ministry. And I'm really happy that we have a task force between the 2 entities that will focus on selection of programs, selection of training institutes, and good selection of job employers, inshallah.
The 2-year training program will target job seekers and laid-off employees to attain sustainable employment opportunities, as well as fulfilling their professional and practical aspirations. The Ministry of Labor and PDO will cooperate in preparing and implementing training strategies and plans to ensure the readiness of the workforce to be employed in the minerals and energy sector. Salih Bakhalfan al-Rahbi, Sultanate of Oman Television, Muscat.
Thank you, Saleh. And now to the COVID-19 status here in the Sultanate. The Minister of Health reported 20 new COVID-19 cases and 33 recoveries during the last 24 hours. It did not report any COVID-19 deaths. The ministry also reported that the total number of COVID-19 cases registered in the Sultanate reached 303,915, while the total number of deaths was 4,101. The total recovered cases reached 299,181. The ministry indicated that the total number of inpatients reached 25, of which 10 are in intensive care units. This is the Sultanate of Oman Television, and now before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Highness the Deputy Prime Minister for Defense Affairs visited the cyclone-hit areas in the governorates of North and South Al-Batina. Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology continues the works of repairing the damages to Al-Batina Main Road. The state sectors exert continuous efforts to bring back services and to repair damages caused by Cyclone Shaheen. And the Sultanate celebrates the 50th anniversary of its joining the United Nations, and the Foreign Minister stresses that the Sultanate is an example of diplomacy, international cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. And with that, we come to an end of tonight's news bulletin. Remember, Cyclone Shaheen was an extremely powerful tropical cyclone that our country has experienced. And with the grace of the Almighty Allah, we are all united, government and people, to get back to normalcy. From the entire news team and myself, we thank you for joining us, and we say good night to all of you.